A fundamental principle in dog training is to teach your dog whatever it is they need to know before you need to use it. Many people are aware of this, but the part that often gets overlooked is that you also have to teach the dog how to do those things in the context you want them to do them in later on. This is especially true for the recall because it is notorious for being difficult to generalize well. For example, a recall in your backyard with nothing going on is going to be entirely different than a recall off of some dogs at a park. To a dog, those are two very different things. And until you take the time to teach them that they're not, they're always going to be unreliable in that context. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 drills that you can use to start teaching your dog to recall even when they're really interested in something else. Let's get started. There are a couple of things you're going to need to have in place ahead of time before you do these drills. First off, your dog needs to be able to recall in a calm, quiet environment on an audible cue only, not hand signals or body language. This is because we want to create a recall that we can actually use in the real world. And in real situations, more often than not, your dog will not be looking at you whenever you need to recall them. And if the dog isn't looking at you, they can't read your hand signals or body language, which would essentially make that type of recall useless. If you'd like some guidance on how to do this, check out my first reliable recall video and go through the steps there. Secondly, take some time to think about and maybe even write down all the things that motivate and distract your dog. Then put them in a low, moderate, or high category. Here's Nova's example. On the low end, we've got other dogs. In her moderate section, we've got food, people, and wild animals. And on the high end, we've got balls and tug toys. Having at least a rough idea of your dog's motivation and distraction hierarchy is essential for this process because we're going to start on the low end and progress our way through to the high end. And every dog's list is going to be different. If your dog doesn't care for toys very much, then you can use different types of food to either raise or lower the distraction and motivation level as needed. For example, for most dogs, a dry dog biscuit is going to be closer to the low end, and raw steak is going to be closer to the high end. If your dog's highest distraction is something like wild animals or other dogs, then you may have to get creative with how you set up these drills. In these cases, I like to use long lines, fence lines, and crates during the wandering recall drill. One of the more natural steps to take after teaching your dog to recall in a low distraction environment is to simply build up distance in that context. Because the distraction level is so low, you can increase the challenge by creating more distance between you and the dog before you recall them. To do this, just let your dog wander around, let them get a little distracted, and then give them the recall command. When they start moving towards you, mark and reinforce them with something of really high value. Start off with closer distances at first, and then gradually build in distance as they show that they can consistently recall at those shorter distances. After the dog is consistently recalling at longer distances, you can gradually introduce distractors that are higher up on their list. What you'll likely have to do is go back to shorter distances at first, around that new distractor, and then gradually build the distance back in. Also, don't be afraid to use a long line if needed to keep the dog from self-reinforcing on that thing. And for all of these drills, don't wait for the finish to mark and reinforce the dog. What we want to do is keep the fun and energy and intensity up really high. So what you'll want to do is mark and reinforce them as soon as they start turning and moving towards you. We can always add the finish back in later. For this drill, you'll need an assistant. Give your assistant something in your dog's low or moderate category and have them show your dog that they have it. Then have your assistant lure the dog away from you and give them the recall command as the dog is moving. Do this from a short distance at first. At the moment you give the recall command, your assistant should shut off access to that distractor and stop moving. If the dog recalls, mark and reinforce them. If they don't recall right away, wait a few seconds, then give them the recall command again. If the dog doesn't recall after the second or third command, reset the drill and try again. And maybe even decrease the difficulty somehow if you feel it's necessary. The dog's recall should become faster over time. When they get to the point where they're recalling on the first command consistently, increase the distance and repeat the process. Do this until your dog is recalling off of the distractor even at longer distances. Once they are, go back to shorter distances, but now use a distractor in your dog's high category. And again, gradually increase the distance as the dog gets more consistent.
Nova, here. Nova, here. Nova, here. Nova, here. Good. Yeah, keep dragging her away. Nova, here. Good girl. Nova, here. Good girl. Yeah. Nova, here.
When your dog is able to recall off of a high value item at longer distances, then they're ready for drill number 3. I find that this drill is best done with toys, but it can totally be done with food. Start off with either a low or moderate level distractor and play with it with your dog. If you're using food, then this would be in the form of food chase games. At some point during the play, toss that item as far as you can and recall the dog as they take off after that item. When starting out, give the dog the recall command while they're still closer to you than the play item. If they successfully recall, mark and reinforce them immediately with a more valuable item, or at least same value item. And be sure to keep the energy and intensity high and playful. Then go back to playing for a couple of tosses and repeat the process. If the dog doesn't recall and they continue to take off after that other play item, use your body language and raise your voice if you need to. Make sure that they feel your displeasure about making that decision. Do just enough to keep them from getting much, if any, enjoyment out of going after that other item. Then go and retrieve that item yourself and reset the drill. As your dog gets better at this drill, you can bump up the difficulty by using a more valuable item to throw and play with, or you can wait until your dog gets closer to that item before you recall them off of it. When your dog can recall away from something of high value when really close to it, then they've pretty well mastered this drill. These 3 drills will do a lot to make your dog's recall a lot more reliable in real-world situations, but the work isn't done yet. The last piece of the recall puzzle is to practice in the very environments and situations you want your dog to recall in. And this usually entails some form of off-leash recalls in public places. So for safety reasons, it's a good idea to condition your dog to an e-collar and then teach them what it means as it pertains to the recall behavior. That way, if something goes wrong, you'll have a safety net in place. And that process could be an entire video in and of itself. And maybe one day I'll get around to making it. But for now, spend a lot of time on these drills and take them as far as you can with the resources you have. The more practice you get with these drills in a controlled environment, the more likely your dog is to recall in an uncontrolled environment. As always, feel free to ask questions in the comments section if you have any. Good luck with these drills, have fun with them, and I'll see you in the next video.